When I introduce you to variables, I let you know that in PHP you have both integer and floating point number types. Remember that floating point means decimals. Examples of valid numbers in PHP can be anything like the following. When you assign a number as a value, you never quote it. Quoted numbers are strings. Numeric values, they are not quoted and they don't contain commas when we indicate the thousandths place. Numbers are assumed to be positive unless they are preceded by the minus sign. If I create a variable called num, and in this case I'm going to make it equal to one of the numbers that you might not be familiar with. So we'll do 4.4 E2. And then I'm just going to echo out the value of num so that we can see it on the page. If we save this and we refresh our page, you're going to see that I get 440. The E2 means that it's going to have 2 places after the 4. So if we change this to E4, for instance, and save, the result is now going to be 44,000. So notice that it's going to let us know that it's going to have 4 places following the period. So the first number appears and then any subsequent numbers, but it lets you know where their position is going to be numerically. Any of the other numbers that we use are just going to be numbers that are printed in the way that we've specified. So if I set this to a negative number like so, the value is just going to be the negative number. And if I set it to a positive number that goes into the thousandths place, you're going to see when the number is printed on the page, no commas are going to be printed out. We have the standard arithmetic operators that we can use on numbers. These allow us to do things like add, subtract, multiply, divide, increment, decrement, and to perform modulus. Let's look at what these look like. I'm going to create a couple of new variables. We'll create a variable called num1 and set it equal to 2. Then I'm going to create a variable called num2 and we'll set that equal to 4. Now I'm going to echo out num1 plus num2. When we look at the results on the page, we get 6. You can see that we're adding these two numbers together. We can also do other standard arithmetic operations. So if I subtract and we save, the results are going to be -2. I'm subtracting 4 from 2. We can also do multiplication, which is going to multiply them. We can do division, which is going to divide. And if we change these numbers around, I can also perform modulus, which is going to show me the remainder. So if I refresh my page now, I'm going to get 1. If I divide 2 into 5, the results are going to be a remainder of 1. You can also string together the mathematic operators. So if I did num1 plus num2 times num2 and we save, the results that we get are going to be 9. So it is worth noting that just like when you do math, it doesn't necessarily perform in the order in which it's written. Remember that multiplication and division always take preference over addition and subtraction. So here it's going to perform the multiplication first. So if we multiply 2 by 2, we get 4, and then it performs the addition, rather than adding number 1 and number 2 and then performing the multiplication. If we wanted that to be the results, we would need to encapsulate these in parentheses, and now it's going to add 5 and 2 together and then multiply by 2. So now the results that we get should be 14. In addition to the standard arithmetic operators that you can use on numbers, there are some built-in functions in PHP that you can use as well. Some of the more commonly used ones are going to be the round function. I'm going to create a new variable and I'm going to call this number 3 and I'll make it equal to something that has decimals on it. So currently, if I echo the value of num3, we get the entire value including the decimals. If I add the round function to the beginning of this and encapsulate the number inside of parentheses and save the page and refresh, you're going to see that I get a result of 3. Now it is simply rounding the number up or down. If we change this number so that it is now 3.812 and we refresh, you can see that now it gets rounded up to 4. If it is anything greater than 3.5 5, it's going to round up. If it's less than that, it will round down. You can also round to a specified number of decimal places. You do that by passing on the variable or the number. It doesn't have to be a variable. You could just plug the number in here. And then you would go ahead and put a comma, and you would put the number of decimals that you want. So if we put 3 here, it should give us a result of 3.812. It's going to round the number based on how many places we told it to round. Another helpful numeric function is going to be the number format. Let me show you what this looks like. I'm going to set a new variable called variable 4, and I'm going to make it equal to 20,987. Now, if we were to print this number as is, it is simply going to put the number without any commas. If we want to be able to see this number with the commas, as we would more commonly view it in a written format, we can use the number format function to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and write number underscore format, and then in the parentheses I'm going to pass on the value of number 4, just like we did before. And if I save and we refresh, you can see that now it adds in the comma for us. In addition to adding the comma, you can pass on an optional argument in number format. So if I add 2 here, it's going to set the specified number of decimals as well. So now the number is going to appear with commas and with the decimal points. These types of functions and mathematical operations are going to be really helpful if you wanted to use PHP to perform mathematical calculations like you might use in an e-commerce application. We could set up some variables that might appear in an e-commerce website. So something like quantity, and for now we'll just set that equal to 20. We're going to make a variable called price, which is going to be the price of our item. So we'll make that equal to 78.65, and we'll make a variable called tax rate, and we'll set that equal to 0.08, which is going to give us an 8% sales tax. Now, if I want to perform some calculations, I could go ahead and I can make a new variable called total, and I could make it equal to the quantity variable times the price, and we'll just echo that out so that we can see what the results are going to be. And now if I refresh the page, I'm getting an error, and that's because my variable names don't match. So let's just fix that. And now when we refresh the page, we're going to get the results of multiplying our price by our quantity. We could also set total equal to the value of total plus, and then in parentheses I might want to do something like total times tax rate. And remember that the spaces are optional. I'm just going to add them in since they're going to make everything a little bit easier for us to see. And this is simply going to calculate the total plus our tax rate. So if we now refresh, we can see that it's going to give us the value of quantity times price, and then it's going to set total equal to the value of total plus total times tax rate. So if we wanted to test and make sure this is working, we could go ahead and set the price to something like $2. So this will be easier for us to see. And now it's going to multiply $2 times 20. So that's going to give us 40. And then it's going to multiply the total 40 times 0.8. So if we save now and refresh, we're going to get 43.2. We might want to display the value of total in a more human readable format. So we can use the number format to do that. So I'm going to set total equal to, and I'll use the number format function. And then in parentheses, I'm going to pass on the value of total. So it'll just take whatever the current value of total is. And we're going to go ahead and put comma 2, which is going to add the 2 decimals to it. So if we save now, our number is going to be 43.2. And finally, we could also echo this in a more user-friendly way. So if we take echo and we print a paragraph tag and put some sort of message. So you can see what I have here. I'm going to create a paragraph. I'm going to have some string text. I'm using some HTML tags of strong so that this is bold, and then I'm going to concatenate in the values of our quantity variable, our price variable, and our total variable. If we save and we refresh our page, you can see that we now get the message. You're purchasing 20 widgets at a cost of $2 each. With tax, the total comes to $43.20. In this example, I'm hard coding the variables on which the calculations will be made. Later on in the course, I'll show you how these values can be dynamically determined by user interaction with an HTML form. Just to review, our first line right here establishes the order total as the number of widgets purchased multiplied by the price of each widget. The second line is going to add the tax to the total, and that's being calculated by multiplying the tax rate by the total. And then we want to add formatting to the total. And of course, the number format function is going to group the total into thousands and round it to 2 decimal places. And when we apply this function, it's going to properly format the calculated value. The last step in our script is to print out the results. The echo statement is going to use our quoted text and concatenate variables in order to print out the full combination of HTML, $signs, and variable values. And obviously, if I make changes to any of these values, it simply is going to update our script. So if I change our price, now it's going to just recalculate and tell us the new values of our variables. There are a couple of things to note. Many of the mathematical operators have corresponding assignment operators, and we can create shorthand for assigning values to the line. So for instance, instead of writing the quantity times price and then setting that equal to that current value plus the total times the tax rate, we could actually write this in a more succinct way. A more succinct way to write this would simply be to write total and make it plus equal and then put total times tax rate. If I comment this line out and save my page and refresh, we're going to get the exact same value. You can see that this line is the same as what we had previously written before. Another thing worth noting is that if we set up our price value without using 2 decimals, so if I change this to say 85.2 and I save my page and we refresh, you can see how it's going to display. If I want this to display in a more human, readable manner, I would want to perform my number format to price before printing it. We would simply do that by using number format function, and now the values are going to be printed in a more human, readable manner. If you go to the PHP manual and search for math, you can get to the mathematical function page, and again, this is going to just list a slew of mathematical functions that are available to you. So again, this is a great resource for things that you might want to perform when you're doing things with math. We'll look at some of these other mathematical functions later on in the course, but I did want to show you where this is available for you if you decide that you need to find something that we didn't cover in this lecture.